sometimes as we gather in the industry, we always talk about what we need to change, and that's where the conversation always goes, but sometimes we don't celebrate what we have changed. Winding the clock back, what trait or quality that was once common in Holstein cattle would you never want to add back to this breed? Never want to add back.
Well, I guess reproduction, you know, and looking back in the 50s and 60s, our reproduction was so much better than it is today. And there's a couple of reasons, of course. Our cows milk a lot more today, but by the same token, we were selecting for high-producing 2-year-olds without putting any pressure at all on reproduction. And it's pretty simple to see that the higher producing cows, or the cows that are open, will produce a little more milk. Our index said that's the highest index cow, so that's where we went for bulls and foundation females. Inadvertently, we were selecting for high producing cows that didn't breed back, and by golly, we got them. If you select for something, that's what you get. So I guess that's the thing, and I think our reproduction today is a lot worse than the statistics show, because just look at all the different things we have today, prostaglandin, GnRH, all the synchronizing programs we didn't have all that stuff years ago, and still our reproduction was better than it is today. So I think that's one of the really main problems in the breed today. We got to fix reproduction. That takes most cows out, I think. A lot of times we don't get the right answer off the WHA sheet. We got a cow milking maybe 8 months and she's stale, going down on milk a little bit. We ship her and we mark her down as low production. That's not the reason. If that bugger was bred 6 or 7 months, we'd probably keep her. So it's reproduction that took her out, not low production.
Yeah, I think like Bob says, we're feeding better, these cows are milking better. So we need to keep these cows with condition. They're really dairy. It seems like they're cows that are a little harder to get bred because they're milk heavy and they don't have the strength to help their reproductive tract. But it is a thing you've got to watch today is fertility.
Why don't we, I have some more questions here, but why don't we open it up to the audience? If you have questions, just raise your hand, we'll call on you. If I don't see a hand, I will keep going through my questions. Bob and Frank, if you were king of the U.S. genetics program, what trait would you place on the development fast track? We're not going to worry about how it's going to happen, but what trait would you put on the development fast track, ultimately creating a trait with breeding values that breeders around the U.S. and the world could use to better breed cattle?
Well, I think today maybe protein is going to be key, and the other thing is fertility. Those two things, it looks like the future is going to demand. So that's what I would be breeding for.
Well, I guess we keep cows to make profit, and if you do a little pencil pushing, it's pretty easy to figure out that a cow that makes 5 lactations will make almost 3 times as much money per day of life as a cow that makes 2 lactations. It just costs a lot of money to raise them buggers up anymore. And so I have asked Holstein Association to take a look at trying to establish a genomic base for cows that make 5 or 6 lactations at least. And they're working on it, and I really appreciate Holstein grabbing onto that, running with it. They haven't got the answers yet, but hopefully they will. One of the things that I think long-lived cows tell us, it's the only single trait that selects for just about everything that's important. A cow that makes 200,000 was a cow that bred a lot of times. She's a cow that calved a lot of times without a lot of problems. She don't have health problems, or she wouldn't have got the 200,000. She milks enough, or she wouldn't have got the 200,000. Her disposition was reasonable enough, and her type was good enough to let her get there. I mean, a 200,000 pound cow is just the kind of cow that you select for everything with one trait. And that would be what I'd do on the point.
Why don't they use bulls out of cows like that?
Well, I sure wonder why, because that's one of the things that I really harp about all the time, is that our genomics, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. I think genomics is the best thing that ever happened to us. But we're using it so bad. I think we use all the early genomic bulls instead of trying to go for the outliers that come along a little later. You know, when you look at the bulls we prove in this country, we prove 1,200 of them or so a year. And out of that 1,200, if we got a couple dozen that are outliers, that's about it every year. Maybe 24, 25, 30 bulls. And yet we're using all the other 98% of those bulls. Today, 50% of the semen sold is young sires, and I think that's just as silly as it can be, because those cows are not yet proven. They're just 70% reliable.
Kathleen has a question?
Well, Frank and Bob, you're both known for your franchise cows and cow families, and that's put your name around the world. I'm curious to know, for each of you, what's a favorite franchise cow that you admire of somebody else's? You can't say Del and Roxy back and forth. What's the cow family out there in the world or in the U.S. That you look at and say, man, that'd have been great to get hold of her one day, you know, at one time?
Well, I guess a cow that I just kind of run on accidentally with kind of a barn meeting was a cow in Pennsylvania, the Mennonites. Her name was Kevrel Shalomay. She was a Shal daughter, and I mean, there's 6 generations of really good cows behind her, and we were able to buy a daughter out of her. But for me, that was one of the cows that I really liked. And I know there's a lot of other ones out there, but you know, you run onto these cows sometimes, and you just kind of fall in love with them. And that was one of those cows.
Well, when you said that question, of course, the first cow I thought about was Delia, but you shut me out on that. I guess if we look at cows that have impacted the breed, one of the ones that comes to mind is a cow that's probably not real familiar in this room, but Gillette Second Wind has 5 excellent sons in Canada. They're all extra sires, and to me that's just amazing that a cow can produce 5 sons. If every one of them are excellent and extra, that's a good cow. She's one of my favorites today.
Other audience questions? Just raise your hand.
I know you guys have, are obviously world-renowned and extremely respected. What do each of you consider your greatest accomplishment in life so far?
Well, in a couple of months, I'll be married 60 years. That was a pretty good accomplishment. Well, I just feel tremendously lucky that we lucked on the Roxy cow. And I have so many people say, how did you know that cow would breed like that? I said, what the hell ever made you think I knew that? No, we've been very fortunate that we got hooked up with the WHA family. They are just marvelous partners. We own quite a few cattle in partnership with them over the years. And the Roxy cow has just bred on and on to an almost unbelievable thing to the female side. And that brings up a question I wish some of you people would answer. What makes certain cows transmit good females and not so wonderful males, and vice versa? And one of the animals I always think about is a bull that many of you won't know who I'm talking about, but a Montbec bull came, Montbec Cragapple Sovereign. Back in the 50s and 60s, he probably had 30 or 40 excellent sons. Many of them were extra in Canada. He just set the pattern for the cows of that day. And he was in the bull, and he didn't have thousands of daughters like the bulls do today, but he had many hundreds. He only had one excellent daughter that I ever knew of. His daughters were just disasters. Well, how does a bull come up with 30 or 40 wonderful sons and grandsons and can't make a daughter to save his life? You would think it'd be bad udders, but the sons put some of the best udders in the breed that we've ever seen. ABC Reflection, Sovereign, Citation, I mean, wonderful udder bulls. So I don't know, those things. And then there's certain cows, and maybe Roxy's one of them. She had some decent sons, but no real big time sons. And I guess that would be a disappointment in life, but one of the things that made me happy in life was the way she transmitted to the female side. One of the things I like to brag about, the last time we done a check on Roxy, she has over 550 excellent descendants in direct female line without a break in that. And that's a heck of a lot of excellent descendants in unbroken line.
Well, I think, like anything else, you got to try to buy a good cow and then have some luck. And always use bulls that are going to put enough milk in there or other things where they're profitable. And you know, if that happens, you got a pretty good chance of succeeding.
Frank and Bob, just to dovetail on what you just said, with families that have done so much and had so many different branches, which are your favorite branches of either the Dellas or the Roxys? Obviously, they're known by different forks of the family. Which ones were your favorites?
That's a tough question. I guess all the time you think that the test Stella was going to be one of the better ones, and then you know, another bull pops up, and like Die Hard there, and it's hard to say, but I think today the maybe the Embry part of the family has really done well. So I guess there's a couple different bulls in there that have done okay. So maybe a couple of the daughters.
There was one daughter, Roxy, the early daughter that I sold to Hanover Hill, that just outshone all the rest. There was a lot of good daughters, but Hanover Hill really done a great job of breeding that cow and promoting her. She had several really good sons, and she's behind a heck of a lot of the good cattle that Hanover Hill bred. She'd be the third excellent dam in a 5-generation group that all have over 12 excellent daughters, and that's in 4 different countries. They started in the U.S. and they went to Canada and they went to England and they went to Ireland from there. And that family is just going on. The 5th generation now is up to about 17 or 18 excellent daughters, and that certainly would be Millimore Roxette would be the cow that I think really made the Roxy family what she is.
Well, both of you had cows that were outstanding individuals. Did either one of you think about using Week's program as far as breeding those cows to keep them going the way they're going?
I guess we haven't really. We've always kind of talked to people that knew about young bulls we use and figured out what they offered and what the cow needed and went kind of that route. But I know a lot of people have a lot of confidence.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. I was too busy watching that Jim.
Do you ever use Bill Weeks' round sharp program in breeding your Roxy?
Well, yes, we do. And we don't have an analyzer come in, but we use that philosophy a lot, and we kind of do our own analyzing. And I have had an analyzer a couple times, but certainly that's a good method. You have to breed strengths to weaknesses if you're going to correct them. And we certainly do use AAA business.